If you're serious about military history, fieldcraft, and the brutal reality of how wars are actually survived, you're in the right place. Before we begin, make sure you subscribe to Iron Age Instincts, because this channel exists for people who care about real historical detail, not recycled trivia. What you're about to hear isn't romantic, and it isn't comfortable. It's about how ordinary soldiers in World War II managed to sleep on frozen ground without dying, losing limbs, or collapsing from exhaustion. This knowledge was earned through suffering, improvisation, and hard lessons learned the slow way. If you stay with me for the next few minutes, you'll understand why sleep itself became a survival skill on the cold fronts of the war. One of the biggest misconceptions about World War II soldiers is that sleep was optional. In reality, sleep was survival. On the Eastern Front, in the Ardennes, in the mountains of Italy, men were expected to fight after nights spent on ice-hard ground in temperatures that froze sweat inside boots. Soldiers who slept wrong didn't just wake up sore. They woke up with trench foot, frostbite, pneumonia, or not at all. What follows are 7 documented practical methods soldiers used to survive frozen ground, and how the same principles still apply today if you ever find yourself sleeping cold and exposed. The first hack was never sleeping directly on the ground, no matter how exhausted you were. Veterans across armies learned this lesson fast. Frozen ground acts like a heat sink, pulling warmth from the body all night long. Even a thick coat didn't stop that heat loss. Soldiers used whatever they could find to create separation. Pine boughs, straw from barns, broken fence rails, ammunition crates, spare uniforms, even dead grass scraped together with helmets. A German infantry manual explicitly warned that direct ground contact would steal life from the sleeper. In practical terms, this means insulation mattered more underneath than on top. If you're applying this today, prioritize building a thick insulating layer beneath you before adding blankets or sleeping bags. Elevation, even by a few inches, can mean the difference between rest and hypothermia. The second hack involved sleeping slightly elevated and angled, not flat. This wasn't about comfort, but circulation. Soldiers learned that lying completely flat on frozen ground increased blood pooling in extremities, accelerating frostbite. Many slept with shoulders slightly raised using packs or rolled coats, allowing better blood flow and reducing cold stress. In foxholes, they'd carve a shallow shelf so their torso stayed higher than their legs. Modern survivalists can apply this by using backpacks, logs, or folded clothing to raise the upper body slightly when sleeping cold. It's subtle, but it preserves circulation and reduces heat loss. The third hack was sleeping in shared heat zones whenever possible. Despite regulations about spacing, soldiers frequently broke rules to survive cold nights. Men slept back to back, shoulder to shoulder, or even partially overlapping when conditions became extreme. Soviet troops, in particular, practiced communal sleeping during winter halts, sometimes stacking bodies under tarps to trap heat. This wasn't about morale. It was thermal efficiency. Human bodies radiate warmth, and clustering reduced overall heat loss. In modern terms, this principle applies in group survival scenarios. Shared shelters, tight spacing, and wind blocking dramatically increase overnight warmth, even without advanced gear. The fourth hack was managing moisture before sleep, not after. WWII soldiers quickly learned that dampness was deadly. Sweat, melted snow, and condensation inside clothing froze overnight. Before bedding down, experienced troops removed wet socks, wiped feet dry, and either slept barefoot inside coats or put on dry foot wraps if available. Some German soldiers slept with socks tucked inside shirts to dry using body heat. If no dry clothing existed, soldiers loosened boots and layered insulation around them rather than wearing frozen leather. Today, the same rule applies. Never sleep in wet clothing if you can avoid it, and if you must, prioritize drying your core and feet first. The fifth hack was using wind barriers more than blankets. Soldiers discovered that wind exposure mattered more than temperature alone. A mild sub-zero night with wind could be worse than a colder, still night. As a result, men prioritized shelter walls made from snow, earth, ponchos, doors, or wreckage. In the Ardennes, American troops slept behind overturned vehicles and stone walls rather than inside open forests. Blocking wind reduced convective heat loss dramatically. Applying this today means focusing on windbreaks first. Even a poorly insulated shelter works if wind is eliminated. The sixth hack involved controlled calorie intake before sleep. Soldiers who skipped evening food suffered worse cold injuries. Fat and carbohydrates provided slow-burning energy that maintained body heat overnight. German and Soviet rations emphasized dense foods before night rest when available. Veterans recalled deliberately saving bread, fat or meat for late consumption. This wasn't superstition. Digestion generates heat. For modern use, eating calorie-dense food before sleeping cold remains one of the simplest and most effective survival techniques. The seventh and final hack was mental discipline regarding sleep posture and movement. Soldiers were trained not to curl tightly into fetal positions, which restricted circulation, but also not to sprawl and expose limbs. They learned to tuck extremities, protect joints, and periodically shift position to restore blood flow. Some units rotated light movement schedules even during rest, forcing men to wake briefly and flex fingers and toes. While brutal, it prevented frostbite. Today, periodic movement during cold sleep can still be the difference between numbness and injury. These weren't tricks learned in classrooms. They were paid for with suffering, amputations, and deaths. WP soldiers didn't conquer frozen ground. They adapted to it, night after night, one miserable sleep at a time. If you value serious historical knowledge and real-world survival lessons drawn from it, subscribe to Iron Age Instincts, share this with others who care about the truth of history, and keep this knowledge alive.